2019. So we all rise for the pledge, please. There you go. Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. So everyone's here. I'm glad everyone's back this week. Is there any changes to the agenda? Hearing none, we'll move on to council reports. Start with the council first, and then we'll go to our guests. So, Councilmember Dorsey.
Start with me?
Joe paid me $5, so we start with you.
All right. All right, so it's been a pretty slow week, as you all know. It's with the snow and all, but we did have a briefing with Jeff on 214. Also, we met with, I'm not going to go into this too much because I know the other members here might want to talk about it too, but we did have a meeting with Troy Nichols, our lobbyist, and Drew McEwen, Dan Griffey, and Tim Sheldon. And then on today, I had a meeting with the Transit Authority Board, and I'll stop there so that other people can talk about the meetings if they wish to.
Okay, thank you. Councilmember Nisco.
I had a whole lot of nothing. A lot of cancellations. I did do a tour of the Mason County Jail, and I think most of the council, if they haven't done that, it's pretty eye-opening. And our briefings with Jeff, and shoveled a lot of snow. That's really about all I did.
Shovel a lot of snow.
Councilmember Krantz.
Yes, well, staff briefings, study sessions, the meeting with our state legislators every year. We have a list of projects that we're doing or looking forward to do in the future. We meet with our representatives and our senator and talk about grant funding. Grant funding has been a phenomenal thing we've been taking advantage of over the past years. And so we just go over there and kind of hang out at the Capitol, and it was a good time to touch bases with our legislators. And tomorrow morning I'll be at a criminal justice board meeting, and that concludes my report.
Okay, thank you. The last couple of weeks been pretty quiet. I want to commend Public Works and the police and all other city employees who were diligent in meeting the storm challenge. And I know my streets were.
I'll do it.
Yeah.
I'll do it. Come on, man.
And I know there were complaints by people, and most of the complaints were about you doing your job too well, plowing their driveways in after the first couple snows. But I know streets I drove on, at least initially, they were passable, and then later on, they were very well. So I just want to commend everyone for getting through the storm. So thank you very much. These upcoming weeks, the city manager, deputy mayor, and I will meet with Mason County Department of Health on the opioid, their initiative on that for Mason County. I have a Mason County Housing Authority meeting first Monday in March, and then I'm going to attend the Crossroads board meeting this Friday to see if we want to officially have a city representative on that moving forward. Okay. Deputy Mayor.
Thank you. In addition to the meetings that have already been mentioned, tomorrow I'll be attending the EDC luncheon at Little Creek Casino. I also have a Peninsula Regional Transportation Project Organization meeting March 15th, and they are seeking a new administrator, so I'm looking forward to some information coming out of that meeting. And I, again, thank everyone for bearing with me as I was out of town at conference the last meeting.
Councilmember McDowell.
I took a tour of the old PUD building, the mental health facility that's being built. And so it's just still bare bones in there, but it's coming along. So that was very interesting. Last Thursday, met with our reps and our senator, Tim Sheldon, Drew McEwen, and Dan Griffey, and we met with Troy Nichols on the projects that we're looking forward to the city doing, hopefully. Friday, had a briefing with Jeff, and tomorrow I'll be attending the EDC luncheon at Little Creek.
Thank you. Councilmember Schmidt.
I'll also echo the mayor's sentiments about our thanks for the Public Works and city staff that worked hard to keep up with the storm with absolute minimal staffing and resources. Working for the Department of Transportation, I know it's all hands on deck when this stuff happens, especially on the west side of the mountains. We don't know how to handle snow and ice, and it's just the way it is. And I know that the overtime hours are no fun, but it's appreciated. And in my opinion, it mutes the negative comments or any complaints. So as far as I'm concerned, top-notch job. With that, attending the annual luncheon tomorrow at Little Creek, and EDC board meeting Thursday morning, MACECOM board meeting Thursday afternoon, and next week we'll be attending a planning meeting with the Shelton Farmers Market in the evening. And that is all.
Thanks, sir. Okay, next we have a couple reports from our lodging tax advisory groups that receive funds. First, Kristen Fabry from the Mason County Historical Society is here to give a report for third and fourth quarter.
Hello, City Council members. Mason County Historical Society first wants to thank the City of Shelton for their continued support for the museum. The third quarter of 2018 was a busy one for the museum. In July, we began putting together a new local artist display to include artists Waldo Chase, Ori Nobles, Clarence Beauchamp, Ethel Dalby, and Mel Bearden, just to name a few. The collection includes an original Waldo Chase print that was donated to our museum from Judy Maxwell that was passed on through her family, which is pretty special. In July, we were also able to get our Archive in a Box online archives up and running. So now you can go to our website and there's a tab for online archives that we'll be adding to. We got some funding from the County Heritage Grant, and we're able to scan in some of our oldest Pioneer family photo albums and add that online to Archive in a Box. And we've since added maps to the collection and a large collection of Mason County Historical Society newsletters from years past. So we'll be continuing to add to that collection as well. In July, we had an event at the Grant School. We had a potluck, and with the help of the Pickering Community Club, and it was a small turnout, but it was very interesting. We were able to see photos of the past classes and teachers, original maps from the school, and hear stories about the history of the school, which was really neat. In August, we started a fundraiser to get Babe the Blue Ox blowing smoke from his nose again. As many of you may remember, they used to do in local parades. His head would move back and forth and he would blow smoke. We have raised the funds to do that, and now we're in the process of trying to get that project completed. So stay tuned. You'll be seeing smoke coming from Babe again. Also in August, we hosted Speaker Mayumi Tsurukawa as part of the Humanities of Washington Speakers Bureau program. She gave a talk about Japanese American history in the state of Washington, which is really interesting. We had about 45 people in attendance for that, so it was very successful at sparking community discussion. In September, as many of you are aware, we unfortunately lost our board president, Annette McGee, who's still very dearly missed, and Mike Fredson, local historian and former board president, filled the position, so he's our current board president now. Mike has hit the ground running and has lots of plans to continue to grow and improve the organization. We also welcome Stan Graham, former staff member and former board member, back to the board to fill the empty spot. Our program for the month was Michael Hemp. He spoke about marine biologist Ed Ricketts and new discoveries about Pacific Northwest marine ecology. There were about 20 in attendance at the program, and Michael Hemp continues to do research on this topic through our organization and others, and might be offering further programs as he has updates to his research. In our third quarter of 2018, we had 694 visitors to the museum, with 174 from out of town, 128 from out of state, and 17 from out of country. So that was pretty successful. It's always interesting to see where people come from. Okay, in our fourth quarter, we had many important updates and changes as well. In October, we hosted a program called Whiskey and History at the Hardware Distillery in Hoodsport. And Mike Fredson gave a presentation about Hoodsport bootleggers digging Edna Shively. And Sydney Sun gave a presentation on her family history in Hoodsport. The Sun family homesteaded on Hood Canal in 1889. So that was a really nice presentation. The program was standing room only with over 45 in attendance. The whiskey was a good lure, I think. So, also in November, we welcomed our new volunteer, Robin Von Ruden. Robin has been entering sessions into Past Perfect. He's been working on our online sales, revamping our website, and working hard to make the museum the best it can be. He's been wonderful. So Robin and his mother, Melissa Von Ruden, helped decorate and hand out candy as part of the participation in the Downtown Merchants Halloween Spooktacular. So that was nice. In November, we held our annual Veterans Day program with George Radovich as our speaker. George works with the Disabled American Veterans Shelton chapter and gave a presentation about local Air Force pilot Homer Taylor. George was also kind enough to donate several photos, a uniform, and military paperwork belonging to Taylor to our museum. In November, we also kicked off our annual fund drive, and currently we've raised $11,447 towards our goal of $20,000. And that will continue, I think, through April. In December, we welcomed new volunteer Jan Goodpaster and Roy Ferguson. Jan has been helping with our monthly newsletter and several other projects, and Roy joined the ranks of our car show committee and will be volunteering at special events as well. We're so grateful to have them on board. In December, the museum participated in the annual Downtown Merchants Holiday Magic event. At the event, we had a silent auction, and then we had another group, United Angels, a group that works to provide immediate veterinary care and food for animals in need. They had a booth set up outside that provided tree decorating stations and cider and cookies and all that. In most recent news at the museum, I've decided, after long deliberation, to step down as the director of the Mason County Historical Society in order to be a full-time stay-at-home mom. In the 4 years I've been with the museum, I've given birth to two beautiful children. I've been at these meetings at all stages of pregnancy throughout the years. And they're now 2 and 3 years old and are growing up way too fast. I'll now be their full-time maid, referee, and chauffeur to their preschool and other events. It was a difficult decision because I absolutely love the museum. I love the mission, the staff, and volunteers and being in there. However, I won't be leaving completely. I'll be staying on as a volunteer grant writer and occasionally be coming in to help with collections. Our current collections manager, Liz Arbaugh, is over here, will be taking the place as the new director come March 1st. She's been with our organization for 2 years now and is currently taking courses in museum studies through the University of Washington. And so we're leaving the museum in really good, capable hands, which makes me feel great. And Robin Von Ruden, who I mentioned before, that has been volunteering with us, will be hired on as a staff member at that time as well, and will be taking over a lot of Liz's current duties. So in other news, this weekend, on Saturday, February 23rd, we'll be having a speaker, Felix Bano, and he'll be coming to the museum to talk about historic weather in the Evergreen State, which is timely. Felix is a local broadcaster and historian that explores our region's darkest weather days and most infamous storms. Yeah, the weather this past week was worth exploring. The program is hosted through the Humanities of Washington Speakers Bureau as well. In the fourth quarter of 2018, we had 980 visitors to the museum, with 107 from out of town, 29 from out of state, and 4 from out of country, for a total of 3,059 visitors to the museum for the year, with 564 from out of town, 229 from out of state, and 29 from out of country. So I just want to thank the City of Shelton again for your continued support of the museum. Thank you.
Kristen, I have a question.
Yes.
The talk, the mic,
Was that?
The talk that out at Alderbrook,
Oh, the talk
Is
out
that-
at Alderbrook was canceled
Okay,
due to
okay,
weather and
okay.
will be rescheduled coming up in April.
very good.
Yeah.
Okay, thank
So
you.
stay tuned for that.
Thanks.
Thank you, Kristen.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. Okay, next, Heidi McCutcheon will give a report from the Chamber of Commerce, Shelton Chamber of Commerce.
Mayor, Deputy Mayor, and council members, it's my pleasure to present the 2018 third and fourth quarter Visitor Information Center reports to you. If you don't mind, I'm going to go over these in tandem so that I'm not walking through one all the way and then through the other. As you can see in our fourth quarter report, at that time our Facebook page had about 2,500 fans. We seem to increase about 100 people per month. That's been pretty steady over the last couple of years. Our top post for quarter 3 was Mason Lake being reopened after a health hazard, and that was followed by a post by Skyline Drive-In Theater being the most underrated travel spot in Washington State, as reported by USA Today. Top post for fourth quarter was about the proposed community center at Walmart in Shelton. And then that was followed closely by a post about Christmas tree passes that are sold at our Hoodsport Visitor Information Center. As you can see, about 3/4 of the way down that page there, our Facebook reach by city continues to be first and foremost by Shelton and Mason County. That grew from 117,000 in third quarter to 181,000 in fourth quarter. You can see that that's followed by Olympia, then Seattle, and then alternately either Union or Belfair, depending on the quarter. So it's been interesting to watch that growth for Olympia and for Seattle, that they're watching our Facebook page and finding out what's happening here and what's going on. So we'll continue pushing that news out there for you. The visitors in July, if you take a look at the back page of the third quarter report, you can see that the weather report for July and August was smoky in the 90s, smoky in the 90s, 75 with smoke, very smoky in the 80s, etc. So it's no surprise that our visitor counts were down July, August, and into the beginning part of September. You can see, though, that our phone numbers, or our phone count, increased during that time. We suspect that this is from visitors asking, is it as smoky there as it is here? Which I think all of Western Washington had the same answer for that. In fourth quarter, you can see that we had October still a little bit of the lingering issues with the weather. November we were up, and then December we are actually closed for 10 days due to no heat. So we have some down numbers for that also. You can see once again that our phone counts went up for all of those quarters, with the caveat of December. Website and calendar continues to be used by online visitors. The most sought after pages are our event calendar, and then followed by our employment page. Not mentioned in this report, but a close second is to visitors information within Shelton and Mason County. You probably are all familiar with Business Matters, our magazine that we reformatted in third quarter. Now, instead of just being sent out to via the mail, it's also included in the Mason County Journal, which we understand increases the readership about 40,000. There aren't any LTAC funds that are used for this publication. This is solely paid for by Chamber and Chamber membership. However, it does have quite a bit of information about what's happening here in Shelton. As you can see in the fourth quarter report, the Welcome New Members page last year was a banner year for ribbon cuttings. We celebrated a ribbon cutting almost every other week in 2018, so go Shelton. This is all the information that I have for you. Of course, if you have any questions, I'm more than happy to answer any that you have.
Thank you, Heidi. Questions for Heidi? Seeing none, thank you very much, Heidi.
Thank you.
Thank you, Heidi.
Okay, our next order of business is general public comment. Do we have anyone signed?
We do not have
We
any.
have no one signed up. Okay, so we'll move on to the consent agenda. Is there a motion to approve the consent agenda as published?
I move to accept the consent agenda as published.
Second.
Okay, motion and a second to approve the consent agenda as published. All in favor, aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Okay, motion carries. Okay, next we move on to our business agenda. Do we have any topics that have comments tonight? Okay, thank you, Donna. So our first item on the business agenda is a contract amendment for indirect cost allocation. Interim Finance Director Terry Snitzer, and I don't see Sandy.
Sandy.
Will have details for us.
Yeah, she'll be here Thursday to meet with FCS Group. So I'm here to present the amendment to the FCS Group for the indirect cost study. This amounts to $5,000.42. This is to bring FCS Group to have a stakeholder meeting with all of our departments that are involved in this. With this new structure and format for this indirect cost, it changed quite a few things, especially without our solid waste program, and with it being 2 years difference than from our last update to the model. So we're just asking this to be put onto the action agenda on March 5th.
Okay. Any questions for Terry at this time? Okay. Consensus, move ahead. All right, move ahead to March 5th. Thank you, Terry. Next business item is Community Development Director Mark Ziegler. Give us information about the Civic Center rotating art gallery recommendation.
Thank you, Mayor, council members. I'm bringing you today the latest recommendation from the Shelton Arts Commission for placement in the Civic Center rotating art gallery. The city advertised for artists to submit by the January 18th deadline. 12 artists submitted for consideration for the gallery. The Arts Commission met on January 29th to jury these works, and today we're bringing you 6 total artists, 18 total pieces, and I believe you've got pictures of the art there in your packets to consider for placement. Let's see, installed on March 5th, and that'll run for 3 months, as they typically do, through May 31st. With your approval tonight, I would ask that you waive the 3-touch rule and approve these tonight, if you would, just for expediting this process along and having the art approved and in place for May 5th, as this is a regular occurring process now for, I think, just over 6 years, that having seen this over 2 consecutive meetings might be a little onerous process. If you do agree, I'd recommend a motion to approve these tonight.
I move to waive the requirement for a second reading and to approve the Shelton Arts Commission recommendations for the artwork as submitted.
Second.
Okay,
Whoa.
that was quick.
This is high.
We have a motion and a second to, what was that?
Waive the second
Thank you.
reading and-
Waive the second reading and approve the art as Mark presented. Those in favor? Aye. Opposed? Okay, motion carries. Thank you, Mark.
Thank you so much.
Okay, and that's it for the action, or the business agenda. Moving on to action agenda. Anyone sign up for public comment? No, they haven't. Okay, thank you, Donna. Okay, first item is Public Works Director Gregory is going to speak about a contract update for the 2019 sewer comp plan.
Thank you, Mayor, council members. As we presented a couple of weeks ago, the sewer comp plan, which is going to expire the end of this year after 6 years under that original sewer comp plan, and the requirement to update that. We did put out an RFQ and got 2 qualifying applicants for that, being Gray and Osborne and Carollo Engineers. After scoring those submittals by 3 public works staff with a total of 300 points possible, Gray and Osborne at 279 points and Carollo at 269, we are asking to enter into a contract with Gray and Osborne as the primary for the sewer comp plan update. And just a few points of clarification and notes. The total budget for this is $200,000 for the original sewer comp plan, and another $120,000 for a facilities update plan, which will be really encompassed into that entire plan. And the reason that comes about now, we originally didn't look at this and weren't going to do a facilities plan, but after some recent grant submittals that we had with a partnership with the Squaxin Island Tribe, we submitted several grant applications through the funding that became available through the Hearst decision for in-stream flows about a month and a half ago now, after a lot of work with them. Right now, the grants are not finalized, but they have been brought back to the Squaxin Island Tribe and the city of Shelton as being awarded. Just the final scope of that work has not been finalized. So technically, the grants aren't final, but the Squaxin Island Tribe and the city of Shelton was awarded $300,000 for the design portion, or at least the initial design portion of the diversion of the Mountain View area for sewer from the main plant to the MBR plant, or the satellite wastewater treatment plant, which ultimately, looking at that and asking how does that help in-stream flows through this, it would be processed through the wastewater treatment plant or the satellite plant, turned into reclaimed water, which any excess reclaimed water that's not used for whatever it might be from a consumer standpoint, whether it be sprinkler systems, flushing toilets, irrigation, things like that, any excess that's not used would be ultimately discharged close to the headwaters of Goldsboro Creek out towards the prison. Right now, it's distributed through a spray field, and ultimately what we're looking at is maybe a deep water well system that would just be put directly into the ground, and we wouldn't lose some of that water to evaporation, plant consumption, things like that. It would go directly into the ground, which ultimately would help the headwaters of Goldsboro Creek. So we were awarded $300,000 for that facilities portion, and another $100,000 for the design of a much larger reclaimed water tank, a holding tank. Would be an in-ground tank. Right now, we've got a tank that's about 30 or 40,000 gallons. We would be looking at something much, much larger in the capacity of 500 to 750,000 gallons as an in-ground tank out at the satellite plant. So we wanted to really get started with that, and it seemed like a good nexus or path forward to the water comp plan to include what those ultimately those infrastructure needs would be at the satellite wastewater treatment plant, and being able to do that with the facilities plan. And I would be happy to answer any questions that you might have either about the grants or the sewer comp plan if you have any.
Questions?
Question. What's the rough time frame once awarded? Once the contract's awarded, what do we, is this within just the fiscal year, the plan to be developed?
Yes, so one of the criteria that we used for scoring both submittals was time frame. It does expire at the end of 19, so that was a priority of the staff that we get this completed before we actually expire, which is not the case with our water comp plan. It has taken quite some time. We didn't get started until fairly late in the process with that one, but it has expired and has been for just over a year now. So we would anticipate this being finished up by the end of 2019, and that is Gray and Osborne's schedule at this point, is to be finished up and submitted and have approval through Department of Ecology by December, thanks, of this year.
Craig, both these items are fairly large ticket items eventually.
Yes.
There's no commitment at this point. The grant is strictly for design and planning for this is, there's no commitment for a certain time frame.
Correct.
to
So
be
what we are
completed.
looking at right now with the grants is within that facilities portion of the comp plan of creating that design for the reclaim tank. We think that the 100,000 will probably get that effort fully completed, 100% designed, which we had in the budget for this year anyway. And looking at that, because right now we're using potable water when Washington State Patrol floods their track, we actually use all of that 30 to 40,000 gallon tank, and we're using that, supplementing that with potable water. So that was already in the works. The other 300,000 for the diversion of the Mountain View sewer, that looks like it's going to get us somewhere in the neighborhood of around 40% design completed. There are multiple funding cycles over the next decade through the Hearst decision. So what our thought is, get through this portion of it and the next grant cycle that comes up. We're anticipating that Department of Ecology would like to continue to move forward with this. If they're going to put 300,000 to the initial design effort, that they would want to complete that effort. And we would put in another grant request for not only the final design, but also some construction money, and then continue on with that. But no requirement of any match funding at this point from the city of Shelton, outside of the sewer comp plan.
Okay, thank you. Anything else? All right. Do we have a motion?
I move to approve the contract for the 2019 Sewer Comprehensive Plan update by authorizing the mayor to sign the agreement with Gray and Osborne, Inc.
Second.
Okay. We have a motion and a second. Now we should have discussion, which we already, any more discussion? Sorry for that. Okay, motion and a second to approve the contract for the 2019 Sewer Comprehensive Plan update by authorizing me to sign the agreement with Gray and Osborne, Inc. All in favor? Aye. Opposed? Okay, motion carries. Thanks, Craig. And you're up for a Basin 3 update.
So we did provide you a little more information. This has been somewhat of a moving target for us, or more information as we get it going along. So we did provide you an updated map and also a quantities projection for the additional work. So what we presented a couple of weeks ago was the cost savings for the entire project. Looking like that is going to come in at about 1.2 million under budgeted for the project, but wanting to really make that a complete project and move forward with paving of all the streets within the Basin 3 area, and also ADA ramps, compliant ADA ramps, and city code compliant 6-foot sidewalks throughout that entire neighborhood. So you will see that most of the area gets new sidewalks and ADA ramps when it's required by the WashDOT standard. And the WashDOT standard does reference anytime you're doing basically a retrofit or an overlay type project, ADA requirements are kicked in. So it would be a requirement for any of those intersections that have sidewalks now that abut the roadway, that we would improve those and upgrade those. So we are asking that because of cost overruns, things that happen, we are not completed with the project. So any of those increased costs that we haven't projected through about 90% completion of this project, anything that might come up in that next 10%, or any cost overruns for this additional work be covered by the street fund. And we are asking for up to 200,000 be allocated for that, just for that simple fact of having a contingency. I would be happy to answer any questions if you might have them.
Okay, let's start with a motion. Do we have a motion?
I move for the remaining grant funds to be expended on the design and construction of ADA compliant curbs and sidewalks per WashDOT and city standards for the Basin 3 project, and allow for no more than $200,000 to be set aside from the street fund as a contingency for potential cost overruns.
Second.
Second, okay. Now, discussion, questions for Craig?
Just for, what do you call, information to the public, is that we have been, again, extremely successful in getting phenomenal amounts of grant money for the city of Shelton on its infrastructure projects. And Mr. Craig Gregory does deserve a lot of credit for that. What would cities do if we didn't get that grant money? How would we fund this stuff?
We would likely be increasing rates once again to cover costs associated with projects that are needed like this, is
And
what my
having
assumption
money
would
from
be.
the citizens.
That's correct.
That's it, thank you.
Okay.
Question? So if we set the money aside, and in all, positive thinking and vibes here, we don't touch a nickel of it, and what happens to it then?
So, Director Gregory, correct me if I'm wrong, but I believe that money would go back to the fund from where it came, and would be available to use for future projects after some strategic planning discussions with the council and with members of staff for 2020 and beyond.
That is absolutely correct.
Fantastic.
And that is a absolute priority of ours. With as much as we have left through the project to be completed and a $1.2 million add-on project, that is a fairly significant project in itself. But to have some sort of contingency, I just didn't want to come back to you, tell you now that that was going to be 100% funded and then have to come back in a couple of months and ask for additional funding. So we're not anticipating touching that, but want to have that so that if we do run into any of those things out there, that modifications onto private property, there are some variables out there with just starting to design this. We have identified quite a few of those already, where we may have to construct some steps, whatever it might be onto private property because of slopes and elevations, getting that stormwater to stay out on the street and constructing parking strips and curbs. That's some things out there that we still have to identify. So without being able to identify those now, just didn't want to have to come back later on and ask the council for additional funding if we don't need to.
Craig, do you anticipate having an updated estimate at some point that you might feel more confident in, or?
Yes,
not?
absolutely. So what we provided you was what we sent Prevetta Brothers for quantities. We will get prices to those. Without being able to, we did an estimate on what the original bid estimates were, the original bid items and what those estimates were. We used those to compile what we thought would be the charges moving forward. Now, what we actually get back from Pavetta might be a different story. So that will certainly be something, and we can bring that back to you as soon as we get those. We got that list of quantities out to Pavetta Brothers about a week ago, and right now they are telling us they will have costs associated with those by the end of the week. So certainly next council meeting, we can provide you with an update to where those costs actually came in. We're hoping they stay fairly close to being the same as what we got with bid items for Basin 3. But right now, we're just up in the air. But we did finally get quantities, but we can certainly bring those back when we get those.
And do you anticipate timing on, what's your anticipated timing, or does the contractor open on that?
We are pushing them to be finished up by the end of June with this entire project. That is what our funding right now allows, is for us to go to June 30th. If we don't get there, we will have to ask for an amendment to that funding source to extend that time frame. We would like to not do that, but right now it is the Basin 3 contractor who they are staying within their allotted amount of days to complete the project, but they have been a little slow in their proceedings through this project. We anticipated them being done much sooner than they actually are, so we'll see how that reflects into the future on the rest of this project.
Okay, thanks. Anything else? Okay, we have a motion and a second for the remaining grant funds to be expended on the design and construction of ADA compliant curbs and sidewalks per Washington DOT and city standards for the Basin 3 project and allow no more than $200,000 be set aside from the street fund as a contingency for potential cost overruns. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Okay, motion carries. Back to Craig again for information on the sewer water utility rate study.
So stormwater
Stormwater.
utility has not had a rate study done, at least that I'm aware of, anytime in the past. And with the new permit requirements from DOE coming in June of this year, really wanted to get a handle on what that looked like moving forward. So entering into an agreement with the FCS group, who has done our last two rate studies for water and sewer, and also has been involved, as Terry mentioned, with the indirect cost model, so has a lot of knowledge of our workings here within the city of Shelton. We did budget $50,000 for this effort, and the most recent estimate is at a little over $27,000, so we are asking to move forward with an amendment to the original rate study contract to increase that scope and spend the additional $27,380.
Okay, do we have a motion?
I move to approve the additional rate study task and associated expenditures by authorizing the mayor to sign the amendment number 1 to the contract with the FCS group.
Second.
Okay, we have a motion, discussion, and questions for Craig. Councilmember
Just
Stitt.
discussion point, in the future, when we do rate studies, one package deal would be kind of cool. So, yeah, that'd be great.
Absolutely.
Thank you.
That is absolutely what we talked about as a staff level, and we are moving towards that. That is not something that we have done in the past, but we do want to get on a cycle where we are addressing all of our rate studies at one time.
Yeah.
You were absolutely spot on.
Anything else? Okay, we have a motion and a second to approve the additional rate study task and associated expenditure by authorizing me to sign amendment number 1 to the contract with the FCS group. All in favor? Aye. Opposed? Okay, motion carries. DeMarc, Commissioner
Thank you,
Mark. Director Mark Ziegler is going to speak to us about the appointments to the city's Historic Preservation Board.
Thank you, appreciate that. Today I'm bringing you the recommendation of 3 members for reappointment to the Shelton Historic Preservation Board. Tristan Starr, Justin Cowling, and Forrest Cooper have elected to throw their names in the hat again to serve another 3-year term each through December 31st, 2021. And this would, with the appointment of these 3, would leave 1 opening on the Historic Preservation Board that we will advertise very soon to try to fill out.
Okay. We have a motion.
I move to appoint Tristan Starr, Justin Cowling, and Forrest Cooper to the City of Shelton's Historic Preservation Board for 3-year terms through December 31st, 2021.
Okay.
Have a second? Okay, discussions or questions for Mark? Councilmember Fines?
Well, just to remind the public of how important it is to have volunteers in the community on all levels taking part in making this city the great city that it is. You know, these are 3 individuals that I know personally and have continued to do a great job for the city of Shelton. And without them, we do not have the staff or the ability to do all the things that the city needs without volunteer groups and volunteer people. And so it is a great appreciation that I personally extend to those 3 individuals, along with all of the other groups and all of the other volunteers, because without them, truly, we could not be the city that we are without them.
Thank you, sir. Well said. Anything else? Okay. We have a motion and a second to appoint Tristan Starr, Justin Cowling, and Forrest Cooper to the city's Shelton Historic Preservation Board for 3-year terms through December 31st, 2021. All in favor? Aye. Opposed? Motion carries. Okay, last action item is, Pam Ward is going to present details on financial services bargaining agreement.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor and council members. We negotiated with the financial services group, the guild, that they have formed in January and a little bit into February, and came to an agreement fairly easily. This will be a 3-year contract, which is what we were hoping for. The changes that were made were not real hugely substantial. A few of them were statutory situations that have come up since their last contract was negotiated. For example, the union membership options, where now you don't have to belong to the union in order to work for the city of Shelton. You may opt out if you wish to. That was a court decision called the Janus decision. And we needed to put language into their contract to that effect. Let's see, the second one was the addition of language included in the new Washington State paid sick leave statute. The sick leave rules that were standard for the city of Shelton were also they were the same in their agreement, their previous agreement. And the new law had all kinds of new things in it that are required for employers to allow for people to take their sick leave to take care of just about anybody they're related to. But we had to put language in the contract reflecting that and changing the old rules. The third thing was the addition of language for the new Washington Paid Family and Medical Leave Statute, which just took effect in January. And we had to put language in the contract for that because it affects their pay. There are deductions from their pay to fund this new law. And this year, starting on January 1st, those deductions began. And the use of that time that will be available will take effect the 1st of 2020. It'll all be operated through the state, much like unemployment is. They'll have to apply for it, and the funds will come from the state to the employee who needs to use this particular benefit. The city is paying a portion of that premium, and the employees are paying a portion of that premium that just started last month. The wage package that we negotiated with them is 3% in 2019, 3% in 2020, and 3% in 2021. And an increase in the city's contribution to medical insurance premiums from $1,500 a month to $1,550 per month. The agreement has been approved by the Guild membership. Questions?
Do we have a motion?
I move to approve the agreement between the City of Shelton and the Shelton Financial Workers Guild representing financial services, non-supervisory, and non-clerical employees for the period of January 1, 2019 through December 31st, 2021.
I'll second.
Okay, we have a motion now. Discussion or questions for Pam?
Question? Any existing members who opt out of being part of the guild, are they still afforded the 3% over 3% year by year?
Yes, they are.
So it is across the board,
They just don't have to pay dues, basically.
right? That's it.
Okay, anything else? Okay, thank you, Pam. Okay, we have a motion and a second to approve the agreement between the City of Shelton and the Shelton Financial Workers Guild representing financial services, non-supervisory, and non-clerical employees for the period of January 1, 2019 through December 31st, 2021. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Okay, motion carries.
Thank you.
Thanks, Pam. On to administration reports. City Manager Jeff Knighton.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, members of council, and members of the public. Just a couple of things I wanted to discuss tonight. First, I wanted to thank you for the going to the transition for study sessions before regular council meetings when necessary. I think it'll make operations of our council meetings more efficient and make better use of your time. when we're making decisions. Secondly, in tagging on to what Councilor Krantz had mentioned about our volunteers, we are going to be looking at having a volunteer appreciation day and providing our volunteers that do so much for the city and help us so much operate the city certificates of appreciation or something to that effect, to make sure that the people that volunteer to help us do city business know that we appreciate them, and we do every day. But we need to find a way to show them that, show them how important they are to us. And lastly, I had something else. Oh, right. So early tomorrow morning, Olympic Highway North will be closed, and be closed for several weeks. And I will be keeping my distance from Director Gregory for quite a while, just in case anything were to happen and people were a little bit upset with him. But we have done quite a bit of public outreach. We have talked to businesses in that area and made sure that those businesses know that we're open to their ideas to help them through while we're doing this road work. And at the end, it's going to be an excellent project. And we are also planning a ribbon cutting ceremony for the public and the council to come see what we were able to accomplish. And that's all I have. Be happy to answer any questions.
Councilmember Krantz?
Yeah, I just wanted, the employee appreciation event that we're gonna have, do you think we might be having like one of them 7-layer chocolate cakes at that event,
I could
I
probably-
like the tall ones, and,
I could
you
probably
got,
be
like,
talked
lots
into
of
that.
layers,
What would you like to take?
I wasn't quite thinking about me baking it.
I was kind of thinking of a lemon blueberry cheesecake. Or something
Either
like
one of those things would be just fine.
Any questions for our city manager? Or any, okay, thank you, Jeff. Any other items for discussion tonight? Hearing none, we are going to adjourn. Our next meeting will be Tuesday, March 5th, 2019 at 6 p.m.
So are you going to sit in